Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Long Night in the Valley by Marileus. Chapter 10. So, said Ochako, do we open the door or... The door was unassuming and bland, very door-like. It was also the only way forward unless they wanted to backtrack several hundred meters. Incidentally, no one was standing directly in front of the door. Ochako wondered if that was a coincidence or if they are all just that wary of things after these past few hours. Aizawa sighed heavily and hauled open the door. It was dark inside, with a single spotlight illuminating a small sign that said, "This way to 5." "That's suspicious," said Ida. "So it is," agreed Aizawa, squinting into the dark. "I'll go." Aizawa walked up to the sign, and the rest of them tensed, ready to jump in at a moment's notice. The lights suddenly turned on, and the music began to blare. A large television screen played a video of a dancing man. "A rickroll," said Todoroki reverently. If Aizawa's sigh had been any heavier, it would have its own gravitational pull. "Yeah," said Six, voice emotionless as ever. "Great job, everyone you got here. Was that really necessary?" "What?" asked Six. "The music," said Aizawa. "Consider it a practical demonstration," said Six. "The farther you go, the older we are, the more experience we have with this kind of landscape." He ran his hand over the sign, and Ochako gasped as patterns and colors followed his fingers. "You're younger than a Skyrunner or All Might, though. You're the same age as Aizawa." "Well, yes, but actually no," said Six. "I was here before they were. I'm older." Ochako's senses, honed by months of living in a building with 19 other teenagers, detected an opportunity for teasing. She pressed her hand to her lips and put on her slyest smile. "Are you? Really?" "Memes," said Todoroki, nodding gravely. "I can see why 9 likes you so much," replies back Six. Six grabs Aizawa's sleeve, preventing him from moving on with the others. "If you're trying to keep me away from my kids, I suggest you don't." Six raised an eyebrow. "Your kids, huh? You know we had a bet running about that." "Excuse me?" "Anyways, I want you to hear this first. You can decide if you want to tell them after, but they are 9's friends. I don't want to be responsible for them running off on their own without your knowledge. I suppose you're going to tell me something that could help Midoriya, but will be incredibly dangerous. Are you sure your secondary quirk isn't precognition?" replies Six. "I am saving my crisis about that until we get out of here. This waste of time is illogical." "Right. So, remember when I said 9 didn't get to choose who we were?" He gestured at himself. "Yes," said Aizawa, already hating where this was going. "There's someone who we don't count as one of our number." Now Aizawa really didn't like where this was going. "You mean you'll count terrorists, but not this person?" "Yeah, usually we keep him locked away. But with all this disruption, he's gotten out, Aizawa says in a serious tone. Not yet. What I'm telling you now may not be relevant at all, but if that door does open, I want you to have this option. Not all the others agree the risk is worth it, but I think this should be up to you, since you'd be the one taking it. What option? Aizawa skeptically replies. That person, he took something from 9 back when his quirk first manifested. You know all the guys you ran into back when you were in his mind space? He took one of those, I think, and most of the others agreed that it would be beneficial if he got it back. He took Midoriya's personality? Yes, you can think of it like that. That part wouldn't happen to be something like a self-preservation, common sense, or grudge holding, would it? No. Pity. When you reach 1, if you want to try to get it back for 9, ask 1 if the vault is open. Exactly how dangerous would this be? Horribly. But you probably wouldn't die. This quirk comes with a time limit. Otherwise, we wouldn't ask at all. 6 let go of Aizawa's sleeve. Your students are waiting for you. You should go. Aizawa stepped into the dark. The battle strobed against the darkness. No, 2. 1 with 6 and a man who must be 5, and another with 6 and Shimura Nana. Both battles were against a darkness whose silhouette resembled the monster of Kamino, far too much for Aizawa's comfort. You're next! Shouted 2 overlapping voices. Aizawa blinked. He was in a well-lit street, looking at what could only be the so-called 5. Izuku woke up slowly. Being asleep had kept some of the pain at arm's length, but now it returned with a vengeance, along with an oddly comforting pressure. Oh, Toshinori had fallen asleep, wrapped around him. That was nice. They really had to start moving again, though. The ground rumbled, and Izuku realized what had woke him up. Toshinori, he said, shaking him the best he could from his position. Wake up, there's an earthquake. Toshinori blinked awake. Earthquake? What do we, do? He didn't know what the earthquake drill for the middle of the forest was. 4 had, but Izuku was having trouble understanding him over the pounding in his head. It isn't shaking anymore, observed Toshinori. We should probably still go. He rubbed his eyes. Let's get you patched up first. I can't believe I fell asleep without making sure you're alright. I'm fine, protested Izuku, trying to stand up. He could just keep using Black Whip to stabilize. The space between his eyes turned white. When it became clear again, he found himself pressed against Toshinori's shirt. Toshinori, he whined, because he couldn't help it. And, oh no, he was such a burden. He shouldn't be making Toshinori hold his weight. He was a lot heavier than he looked, but his head was pounding, and his eyes felt like they were bleeding, and his skin felt like sandpaper. It hurts. I know, said Toshinori. Let me take care of you, please? Toshinori lowered him back to the log and started to remove medical supplies from the pockets of his coat. "What are we going to do after this?" asked Izuku, voice as quiet as he could make it without whispering. "That is an excellent question, my boy," said Toshinori, in an imitation of his usual heartiness. "As you imagine, I've acquired a number of contacts over the years. Some of them are comfortable with less than legal escapades. I didn't think you had any other friends other than Dr. Sakachi and Mr. Shield, and maybe Gran." Toshinori hunched his shoulders. Izuku immediately felt bad. "Well, you ain't wrong. Contacts and friends are in two different categories, I'm afraid. In any case, I'm hoping to eventually reach one of them, and then—" He trailed off, and Izuku got the sense that Toshinori was bracing himself for Izuku being upset. "I'm hoping to arrange passage to Island." "We're leaving?" "Just until we get this cleared up," said Toshinori. Izuku rubbed his eyes. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. "What about Shigaraki and All for One?" "Not your responsibility, my boy," said Toshinori. "It kind of is." "It really isn't. It's our family." I know. At least I know now. Goodness, I don't think I've wrapped my head around it yet." Toshinori rubbed his temples with his wrists, keeping his dirty fingers well away from his eyes. "What about before that?" asked Izuku, guiltily changing his line of questions. "I have a few other safe houses around here. Funny story about one of them. Completely abandoned building on public land. Was being used by some anti-mutant cult. No one ever came to check it out before the initial arrest. So, finders keepers." "You didn't." "I did." "All Might," said Izuku, suppressing a giggle despite the seriousness of the situation. "That's illegal." "I have done a surprisingly large number of illegal things in my life. Comes from fighting with centuries-old monsters the government doesn't want to acknowledge as existing." "They've acknowledged him now," observed Izuku. "Hasn't seemed to help much, has it? Anyway, that one shouldn't be too far from here. Probably. It will still be quite a walk. We'll stay there for a while, until I can reach one of my contacts." Toshinori sighed. "I think the one in Dacre will be the best bet. He works in the shipping industry. I'll introduce you just in case we end up separated." Izuku pretended the last sentence didn't send him into a spiral of panic. Of course, this spiral of panic was interrupted by an entirely different panic, because the ground started to shake again. "I can float us—" "Don't, you'll hurt yourself," said Toshinori, keeping a tight grip around Izuku's bicep. Toshinori's hands were extremely large. A tree crashed to the ground in the distance. Accompanying that was the sound of a roar too loud and animal to be completely human, but too coherent to not be human. Toshinori went pale. "Someone you know?" asked Izuku, covering his ears to keep the sound from battering his brain any further. "We need to go," said Toshinori, bundling up all the supplies he's taken out. "We need to go right now." "All for One?" whispered Izuku, getting to his feet. "One of his subordinates," said Toshinori. "One I never managed to find. I'd hope of all the luck, he started cursing under his breath in English. Maybe Izuku really did have a villain-attracting quirk. The shaking of the ground grew stronger. "Run," said Toshinori. "Don't look back for me." Toshinori had to know that he wouldn't fly or float with Izuku, because a second later his face twisted in something like resignation. Izuku grabbed Toshinori's wrist. He could float them both out of here. Blinding pain lanced through his brain again. Okay, maybe he couldn't. The ground in front of them erupted. A craggy giant burst from below. "Little Lord!" the giant shouted, voice more than loud enough to hurt. A massive hand picked up Izuku, holding him gently but extremely firmly. "I'm so happy to see you again." Something clicked in the back of Izuku's head, a memory he didn't know he had resurfaced. Hi, Markia," he said. "Did this bald man kidnap you? He smells like All Might, but All Might is yellow. Should I kill him?" "No," said Izuku. "He's definitely not All Might. He's, a friend." "Hello, Little Lord's friend." "Hello," said Toshinori, waving, clearly in shock. Markia shifted to wave at Toshinori, and Izuku hissed as the movement jostled his injuries. His minor injuries, his very minor injuries that weren't bothering him at all. "Who do you think you're kidding, kiddo? Not helping Grandma?" "Little Lord, are you hurt?" Markia sniffed him. "You smell like blood. I have to bring you to the doctor." "The what?" asked Izuku, alarmed. "Don't worry, Little Lord. He's a very good doctor. We must go." Wait, said Izuku, before Markia could get more than 3 humongous steps away from Toshinori. "It isn't my blood. It is the blood of my enemies." "Lord, try that too, Little Lord." "But..." "Oh, I forgot your friend." Markia turned around. "Sorry, Little Lord's friends." He picked up an increasingly distressed Toshinori and continued stomping through the forest. Izuku realized that Markia was headed back towards town. "Wait!" he shouted, despite not having a plan for what to do next. "Wait!" repeated Markia, balancing on one foot. Thankfully, Izuku's brain churned out a plan. "My friend is here," said Izuku, gesturing at Toshinori. "Has a house nearby. It would be better if we went there, and then the doctor came to us." Markia grinned, which was honestly an unsettling sight. "You're just like the Lord, Little Lord, always making plans." He brought Izuku up to his face, close enough that Izuku could feel his oddly minty fresh breath, and bonked the top of his head with his nose. "Do you brush your teeth, or do you have a quirk for that?" asked Izuku, before he could think better of it. "Lord gave me a toothbrush quirk. He said he was tired of smelling my morning breath. I do not know why he said that, because it was night. But he gave this quirk to me. It was very generous of the Lord," said Markia, delighted. "How did you know?" Izuku decided not to go down the rabbit hole of his reasoning and shrugged. "Lucky guess?" Makia laughed. Lord says that too sometimes. I'm very glad to see you, little lord. I have missed my lord very much, and you are just like him. 7 vaguely annoyed and insulted ghosts buzz in the back of Izuku's head. I am also glad that you did not grow up to be as large as me. You would be so much harder to carry then. Apparently, Izuku was not the only one with a propensity for rabbit hole thoughts, because he could not imagine a scenario where it would be reasonable to expect him to grow to be as big as Makia. So, Izuku said, you'll take us to my friend's house? Yes, little lord. And then we'll call the doctor, and he'll take care of you. Izuku didn't think Makia meant to be ominous, and yet... So, said Aizawa, surveying the man up and down, you're the one that decided the best place for my student to develop an unstable, highly dangerous, and painful quirk was in the middle of a high adrenaline training exercise full of other students. Hey, said the man, scratching the back of his head. No one got hurt. When you've been dead for as long as I am, you start looking for entertainment wherever you can get it. Besides, you're the one that let the training exercise keep going. According to your compatriot back there, Aizawa said, pointing a finger across his shoulder, you haven't been dead at all. 5 jolted and ran his knuckles along his bandolier. Yeah, forget that easily. It was great to know 5 was trash at lying. True, he'd been told up front that 6's explanation would be at least partially false, but still... Aizawa sighed. 5, who introduced himself as Lariat, or Banjo Dagiro, appeared to be a fairly typical hero of his era. Minimal hero costume repurposed from military gear, worn with just a bit of flair, indicating that the celebrity status of heroes probably hadn't fully set in. Ammunition for a sidearm, although the sidearm itself was well hidden, and the gun was bulky, but if Aizawa didn't miss his mark, those were stun rounds. Eye protection, but not head protection. Not that Aizawa would complain about that, considering... Anyway, if you're all here, let's go. The man clapped his hands together, activated his quirk, and proceeded to fling Aizawa and his students through the air without warning. Sorry about this, said 5, but we don't have time for the whole history lesson, just the highlights. Brief battles flared to life around them as 5 dashed sideways along skyscraper walls and swung from building to building. I always thought of myself as sort of Spider-Man, you know. I don't know that hero, sir, shouted Ida over the whistling wind. Pre-quirk book character, explained 5. Most of them got censored after the first quirk boom. Didn't want to give anyone ideas, but by my time, with pro heroes scene starting up, they came back in a big way. 5 landed in front of a large convention center. This is where they held the first modern comic convention in Japan, or Modicomicon for short. And we couldn't walk here because... asked Aizawa, suppressing an increasing urge to commit murder. I thought my way was more fun, said 5. Haven't you always wanted to travel like that? Aizawa tugged on his scarf. I do, frequently, under my own power. Another Aizawa-sensei, decided Todoroki, quiet but decisive. That did it. Once this was over, he was expelling all the problem children and taking a vacation. The rat god could find a sub. This is where I met 4 for the first time, said 5, pushing the doors open. The auditorium was filled with rows upon rows of booths, all empty of people, of course. Aizawa grudgingly followed. First contact. Those voices. Something about them. The number. Those are your voices, said Aizawa. Yep, said 5. It's a special moment, you know. Aizawa frowned. At this point, he highly doubted that these vestiges were simply based on people. The vestiges themselves had to have reason to suspect that they were at least remnants of real people to give themselves a name like that. And add to that the repeated themes, the oddly ritualistic components. First contact, and you're next. Midoriya's closeness with All Might, and Aizawa got. Honestly, he had no idea. The fact that All Might was still alive tended to rule out the Midoriya's quirk is that he's haunted theory, which admittedly was rather flimsy to begin with. Perhaps it was the legacy-dependent quirk, reaching back from student to teacher. He would be skeptical. Most quirks had some kind of logic to them, and there was no way to extrapolate the entire people from contact with their successor. But Flat King had a student whose head was a manga speech bubble, and other abstract quirks existed. So it still didn't feel right. Surely Midoriya would have figured out his quirk before he was 14 in that case, unless All Might had to be involved for some reason. Also, the fact that they called Midoriya 9, 6's explanation for that didn't even make a little bit of sense. Not to even mention the hints that All for One was actually involved in this somehow. Banjo, said Aizawa. There is no truth in the Commission's accusations, is there? He would have asked 6, but logically 6 would be the best liar, if he was the one chosen to relay the message. Banjo de Guro seemed far less adept at deception. The world seemed to grey out a bit. Are you kidding me? What part? Asked 5, his eyebrows disappearing into his goggles. Yeah, Sensei, there's no way Izuku... I'm not asking about Midoriya. I'm asking about you. How are you connected to All for One? 5 opened his mouth, lips drawing back to reveal his teeth. He looked unspeakably offended. You don't think we actually work for that bastard? Excuse me, sir, interrupted Ida after 5 had tacked on several rather foul epithets. There are minors present. Oops, said 5. Anyway, we do not work for All for One, he continued, failing to answer the question Aizawa asked of him. That isn't what he asked, said Todoroki. All right, maybe Todoroki wasn't all bad. He was still on thin ice. Excuse me, is it a bad time? Aizawa nearly jumped out of his skin as a terrifyingly tall man in a hero costume appeared at the edge of his peripheral vision. He was taller than Yagi. Actually, wait. Aizawa's expert eyes roamed over the man's hero costume. That was cosplay, not professionally done. The man standing there in Midoriya's head in front of 2 professional heroes wearing cosplay. It looked like it had been hand-sewn and inexpertly reinforced, even for vigilante standards. Somehow, in retrospect, this made Midoriya's choice to wear a costume his mother made for his first training session make much more sense. Of course, Midoriya would have someone as ridiculous as he was in his head. Of course, he would have several people as ridiculous as he was in his head. 4th, I presume? I prefer Shimura, actually. Oh, said Uraka. Are you related to Skyrunner? She is my adopted sister's descendant, said Shimura. Hey, I thought we weren't telling them about this stuff, said 5. Shimura blinked. My apologies, he paused. However, considering the structure of my mental domain, it is likely they would have discovered my chosen name in short order. Who do you think he's based on? Asked Ida, leaning towards Todoroki. I can't put my finger on it, said Todoroki, but he does feel familiar. And why is that? Asked Aizawa, pretending he couldn't hear his students. I have a lot of unresolved trauma relating to my biological parents and also my quirk. Oh, said Todoroki. He's based on me. Wow, another horrible thing Aizawa would have to deal with when he was woken up. Isn't your quirk danger sense? That's what 5 calls it. And there's something extremely disturbing about this tall, intimidating, eyebrowless man calling another muscular, intimidating adult man Chan. But I call it... Please don't, interjected 5. Super anxiety. Why? Cried 5. Danger sense is much better name. It's like Spidey sense, like Spider-Man. You like Spider-Man? Yes, said Shimura, but I am not Spider-Man. However, that does remind me. He turned his unblinking gaze to Todoroki. 9 has several plans for removing your father. I believe only half of them were workable, but it's the thought that counts. At least that's what Yagi-chan says. You mean All Might? Asked Aizawa. If his soul hadn't already left his body, it would be now prepared to do so. No, my wife. Yeah, don't think too hard about that, said 5. He's always been like this. I mean, he came up to me in the middle of this convention to tell me about a bunch of underworld deals going on out of town. I thought he was like some especially serious cosplayer, but then he showed up at my apartment too. The surroundings briefly shimmered into something that might have been the mentioned apartment before resolving themselves back into the comic convention. I apologize. I did not realize that it was inappropriate. I'm this little baby hero, just a couple of years out of training, no name for myself, and this guy shows up in the middle of the night like one of those old video games. Like, here, take this old legend and defeat the Demon King, you level 1 peasant. I did not expect you to fight them right away, said 4, looking both vaguely offended and consumed. And now, yep, okay, Aizawa could see the vague resemblance to Todoroki. I'm still not entirely sure why you picked me. Of all people, there had to be a dozen others with the right, requirements? Requirements? Asked Aizawa, having finally managed to shove the part of his brain screaming about the wife comment into a tiny locked box in the back of his brain. Yes, as my other adopted sister said, one must possess a strong will, an indomitable spirit, a sharp mind, a pure heart, and a ceaseless drive to save others, both body and soul. He paused for a moment. She also said something about being just enough of a bastard to be worth knowing, but I believe that was a reference to the book she was reading at the time. Her parentage was certainly known at that point. You see, I can never tell if this guy is serious or just pulling my leg. Why would I pull your leg? Do you need a puppet? I'm begging you, man. Learn some idioms. Wait, shouted Todoroki. Are you related to All Might? Is he your secret love child? The silence stretched out between them. I don't know what this is, said 4. You keep asking 9 if he is one of those. What does it mean? Is it a good thing? Anyway, said 5 loudly. He attempted to prop his elbow on 4's shoulders, but the height difference defeated him. 4 and I had lots of semi-legal adventures. No, we didn't, said 4. Became best friends. My wife is my best friend. Let me have this. Have what? 5 sighed. Okay, whatever, fine. Can you cross them over here? I think I'll need the other one, unfortunately. Why are you different, by the way? Asked Uraraka. The ones before stayed in their own mindscapes, it seemed. Oh, said 4. I'm having flashbacks because... He trailed off and sighed. Flashbacks. Right, wonderful. We're going to have to deal with your flashbacks, aren't we? Asked Aizawa. Unfortunately, yes, 4 said. I apologize for my habit of oversharing. This and that are 2 completely different things. They seem like the same thing to me, said Todoroki. I am inclined to agree. I also apologize for the things you may see. I'll attempt to keep you away from the more disturbing sections. Great, said Aizawa. Can we stop wasting time? We aren't really wasting time, said 4. At the moment, drawing time is compressed. We've only been talking for... He tilted his head to the side. Perhaps a second, in terms of real-world time. He's right, said 5, crossing his arms and nodding. Seconds are still time, said Aizawa, hoping they'd get the hint. I suppose... Oh, you're frustrated. Apologies. Neither of us have interacted with anyone but others in quite some time. I fear our sense of hurry has been damaged, especially with how distracted we all are. Why are you distracted, if you don't mind us asking? Asked Ida. Another unwanted guest is trying to get in. 9 managed to run into someone extremely dangerous. These people had a life connection to All Might too. Damn it. And the blonde idiot was wherever Midoriya was. Maybe that should have reassured him somewhat, because even if All Might is retired, he will still be All Might. But by some dark magic, when All Might and Midoriya were placed in proximity to one another, they gained the ability to spawn problems that Aizawa had never even heard of before. Like this one. Our final meeting, then? I believe that would be appropriate. Black tentacles exploded from 5, covering the space around them.
When they recede, they were in different places, underground. If Aizawa didn't miss his guess, a safe house of some kind? Flickering doppelgangers of 4 and 5 occupied the space.
"Why didn't you transport us like that before?" asked Todoroki. "Had to take the long way the first time," said 5. "That lady's quirk changed some of the rules. You ready, 4? "Let it play out," said 4, gazing at the static figures. "Your choice," said 5, shrugging. The real 5 and 4 abruptly vanished, and the doubles started moving. "I suspect this is the last time we will meet," said an older 4 to a younger 5. "Huh? Why's that?" said 5, twisting in his chair so that his arms rested on top of the back. 4 stared blankly at the wall. "Everything is coming to a head now. I've chosen to put my faith in you and the new laws." "Huh?" "The last push of the old era. My big sister would scold me for trusting you." "Dude, you're not making any sense." "My apologies." 4 turned to look more directly at 5. "The new quirk laws and the establishment of the Hero Commission are steps in the right direction, as evidenced by your existence." "Yeah, sure," said 5. "But what does that have to do with not seeing each other again?" "They're not enough," said 4. "Even now, certain existences cannot cry out for help. What do you do when you can't turn off your quirk?" "You're not going to go terrorist on me here, are you?" asked 5 nervously. "No, I just want you to be aware," said 4. He tilted his head to the side. "Whenever I go home now, there's a danger on the horizon, and I can't tell where it's coming from." "Is it him?" "No, I don't believe so." He sighed. "I suspect it's the Special Task Force, to be honest." "They were disbanded," said 5. "Any one of them that didn't get absorbed by the Hero Commission got let go, or what was the term? Discharged." "Perhaps you're right," replied 4. "Perhaps this is simply paranoia. I would certainly like it to be." "Look," said 5, "maybe I can help. You've never told me where you all live, and—" "Absolutely not. I am certain that he's still monitoring me to some extent. You do not want to be on his radar, Dagura-chan." "Dude, why do you call me that?" "You haven't told me to stop." 5 sighed. I get it. Just let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm a hero for a reason." 4 smiled faintly. "I know," he said. "After all, I chose you. Good luck, Daigoro-chan. I think you'll be able to do it." He started walking away towards the door. "You too, old man, Soma." 4 stopped with his hand on the door. "I believe we will see each other again," continued 5. "Count on it." "In this life or the next," agreed 4. He opened the door. As they crossed over from 5's domain into 4's, the dream around them did not shift seamlessly, staying in the same general location with only the details changing, like it had for the others, but dissolved into something not quite like static. They were standing in the middle of a battlefield, a ruined landscape. Not the ruins of a city, though, which made the jump only more jarring. For all that Shoto was only a teen, he'd seen his fill of city battles. He was used to villain fights. The only time he'd seen this kind of devastation in a place like this had been at the forest training camp last summer. He swallowed, eyes rolling over uprooted and burning trees, huge craters and ruts in the soil, the rare bit of roofing and wall. He realized belatedly this must be the remains of a small rural village. He stiffened at the sound of someone crying. "Over there," said Uraraka, pointing. Shoto turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in a suit hunched over one of the corpses. His face was shrouded in smoke. As he watched, he realized he wasn't crying over a corpse. The other man was still breathing. His eyes were still open. It was hard to recognize Thor's face under all those injuries. He stepped forward, wondering if he should help, if he even could help. His hand passed through the man's shoulder with no resistance. "Shigaraki," said the uninjured man. "Shigaraki Hibiki, you foolish child." Shoto wasn't the only one to gasp. "That's not my name anymore," rasped the injured man. "For," Shoto realized now, "and they got away, didn't they? It's worth it." "What do you mean it is not your name? Of course it's your name. It's the one I gave you. The one you should have been born with. It is your name." "My name's..." the man on the ground panted. "Shh, shh. Don't talk, Hibiki. I'm sorry I snapped. Don't worry. Daddy's going to make this all better, son. A healing quirk..." "Names..." slurred the man. "Shimura Soma. You..." He took a deep, rattling breath. "You don't own me. I'm..." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Free." The scene began to go dark. Before the last of the light was gone, the uninjured man spoke again. "Shimura, was it?" he hissed, voice promising violence. Yagi Toshinori was having the most surreal experience of his entire life, considering this included that awful college party in America, the one where he learned that one for all did not mesh well with mushrooms. That was saying a lot. He was riding on the shoulders of a man who had tried to kill him on the behalf of his worst enemy multiple times, alongside his student and successor, who was being called Little Lord by the man carrying them. They were having an admittedly fascinating conversation about the man's quirks, multiple. One that Toshinori was only barely keeping up with. Two of them were being actively hunted by the government. That is, Toshinori, the retired professional hero, and Izuku, the licensed hero student, were on the run from the government. Not Gigantomachia, the mass-murdering minion of All for One, who, quite possibly, was the most evilest man alive, and also possibly Izuku's father, but no one wanted to think about that. Not to mention all the things going on in their minds. This level of connection to All for One was thrilling, but also incredibly strange. Oh, and they were going to one of Toshinori's safe houses with Gigantomachia. True, Toshinori hadn't been to this one in a while, but it was still a place that was supposed to be safe, hence safe house, and Gigantomachia was not safe. He also was going to be difficult to get rid of, because he had a sense enhancement quirk that let him track down individuals he was familiar with from miles away. Toshinori knew this, because Gigantomachia was currently happily telling Izuku all about it. Izuku reached over and patted on his shoulder. Ah, yes, this was only made more surreal by the fact that Toshinori could feel how much pain Izuku was in, but the boy barely showed it. It made him wonder how often Izuku was in pain and how Toshinori did not see. Izuku patted his shoulder again, this time in a way that suggests he really wanted a hug, but couldn't give him one because he was holding on to Gigantomachia and the logistics didn't hold out. Oh, and there was the safe house. Gigantomachia let them down a short distance from the building. He claimed not wanting to get too close to it because he had accidentally knocked down the building in the past, which Toshinori could easily believe. The building was in better repair than Toshinori had expected. After his long absence, he fished out the spare key from its hiding spot and opened the door. The back entry was full of people wearing black robes and skull masks, all of whom were scrubbing at bloodstains on the floor and walls. Izuku fixed him with a disappointed stare. I thought you got rid of the cultists. Yes, he had thought so too. He had in fact worked quite hard to get rid of them. You, shouted the cultist, pointing. You are with that filthy league of villains. You killed our brothers. Mutant lover. Run? Suggested Izuku. Run, agreed Toshinori. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This video took ages for me to record, as 3 recording sessions over the course of 2 weeks, because I literally was in the middle of exams and I could not record, and I was way too tired with assignments. So yeah, I'm just finishing it off and yeah. Anyway, this was a really lovely chapter. I loved it. It was just quite funny to see the reactions of Gigantomachia and how all the little fancy family tree, which is really confusing. But you know what? When you have a 200-year-old father, things get confusing. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye!